Hey fans of the Conquest of Dovah campaign, this is Dan the DM. Welcome to the true story of what transpired in the one-shot for Sorin, Ves, and Ves Termtmeni. The one-shot took place in the year 6367 on the continent of Thaddeus. But before we get into that, prior to the one-shot, in the year 6356, the Queen of Harganeth, Morathi, made a tactical error when she led her army into the snowy mountains surrounding the dwarven city of Kaz-Karum. King Thorgrim and his army were waiting for her. Ferelden, led by Sir Duncan, and Kaz-Karum's coalition force trapped the Drow Queen and her men in that harsh terrain for a month, shattering their resolve and killing most of her army. Morathi and her drow fled the mountains and returned to Harganeth. King Swiftwater and King Thorgrim believed the threat was quelled, and it was, for a time. Year 6367. During the adventure, Sorin was merely 12 years old, and Ves was 22, unbeknownst to the common folk of Ferelden and most in Thaddeus. But shortly after Dokkan Swiftwater claimed the Ferelden throne, a hag that once worked under the vampire Vlad, Wilma Wormwiggle, had bewitched and seduced the new king. She disguised herself as a beautiful human commoner, Genlia Avicine. Wilma convinced Dokkan to appoint her two children, Dokkan's stepchildren, to the Ferelden Royal Council, despite protests from Sir Duncan. Sorin Avicine, the young mage prodigy, was named Master of Spells and an honorary lord. Ves Termtmeni, the cunning half-drow bard, was named Master of Diplomacy and an honorary lady. Pressure was mounting on both Dokkan and Thorgrim to attack the weakened drow in Harganeth. Queen Morathi, the drow leader, had attacked Kaz-Karum 11 years prior and was still in a weakened state. It was known by all that Morathi intended to wipe out all non-drow from the continent of Thaddeus. Wilma convinced Dokkan to dispatch Sorin and Ves to Kaz-Karum to plan an offensive against the drow, but Wilma had other plans. She ordered her children to betray Kaz-Karum and assist the drow in destroying it. Their mission was to assassinate the royal family, King Thorgrim, Queen Hasva, and Prince Morgrim, and assist the drow in burning the castle. Wilma's reason for this mission was to force the dwarves to flee to King Dokkan for safety, thereby bolstering her own power in Thaddeus. She still intended to deal with the drow in due time. The step-siblings had one more mission as well. They're to locate a powerful artifact in the Kaz-Karum vaults, the Eye of Zulbilt, and perform a ritual with it. Wilma advised her children she foresaw a coming calamity and would need the power of the Eye to reincarnate the Order of the Burning Fist to prevent disaster. Once the ritual was completed, they were ordered to retrieve the Eye and give it to her. Sorin and Ves were dispatched with an escort by Queen Genlia and King Dokkan to Kaz-Karum. While en route, they met Dakarth, Ves' father, and Zombina, the daughter of Queen Morathi and Dakarth. Dokkan had advised his children that Dakarth and Zombina defected from Harganeth and would be meeting them en route to Kaz-Karum to assist them in their mission. But Wilma had informed Ves and Sorin that the two drow were actually in on her scheme. While the Ferelden escort was asleep, Sorin, Ves, Dakarth, and Zombina killed all 6 of the soldiers and hid their bodies. Then they continued on their way to Kaz-Karum. Sorin, Ves, Dakarth, and Zombina were welcomed into the Kaz-Karum castle with open arms and a grand feast in the banquet hall. Ves and Valuik Grimseeker, a dwarven military official, discussed specific plans of attack while the others listened on. After business was done, the representatives from Ferelden, the Drow defectors, and the dwarves enjoyed a night of dancing, drinking, and games. Sorin proved that despite his age, he was an impressive young man. He won an axe-throwing contest in the soldiers' quarters and blackmailed the butler into wearing the queen's clothes and embarrassing himself. Sorin was accustomed to adhering to a strict bedtime and was all tuckered out early on in the night. He fell asleep before things truly heated up in the castle. Vesiesh utilized her cunning nature and deceived the people of the castle. She befriended the queen and led on the lecherous dwarven noble, Uldrim Brownfinger. Prior to their mission, Wilma told Vesiesh that Uldrim had already agreed to betray King Thorgrim, and that the Khazad-Karu Master of War, Valuik Grimseeker, was dissatisfied with the king's rule as well. Ves used this information to her advantage. As the night pressed on, she nearly convinced Valuik to assist her in overthrowing the royal family. Vesiesh had also managed to impress Valuik with a bare-knuckle boxing victory in the soldiers' quarters. Before betraying his king, Valuik had one caveat, however. He spoke of the town blacksmith, a dwarf he respected and admired, a man who was a true leader, filled with charisma and strength. Valuik stated he required the approval of this blacksmith, Vandag Amberbender. This blacksmith arrived in the banquet hall very late, with a friend, Honesty, a young gnomish bard. To the delight of the partygoers, Honesty played one of his freestyle songs for the guests. Honesty sang, and the whole banquet hall danced to his song. As he played and sang, it appeared the bard was eavesdropping on conversations around him, and integrated those conversations into his song. Honesty sang of Uldrim betraying the king, and of Drow waiting outside the city to attack. Queen Hazva became alarmed by this and ordered Uldrim arrested. Queen Hazva and her guards accompanied him to the dungeons where they questioned and interrogated him. Vesiesh sat down with Honesty the bard to have a chat, and he seemed to somehow know much about her. They said their goodbyes, and Honesty told Vesiesh she would never see him again. Valuik and Vandag spoke with Vesiesh in the soldiers' quarters about betraying the king. Vandag was nearly convinced, but ultimately he decided not to assist. Valuik and Vandag stated they would not interfere either, and left the castle. Vesiesh crafted an explosive device using materials she procured in the castle, and gave the device to Dakarth. She learned the back of the keep had a weak section of wall, connected to the closed-off old section of the dungeons. Vesiesh told Dakarth to leave the castle and meet up with the Drow soldiers hiding outside. She commanded him to blow the wall at 3 a.m. He left to do this, bringing the sleeping Sorin with him. Next, Vesiesh commanded Zombina, who King Thorgrim had repeatedly danced with, fondled, and groped, to murder the king with a vial of poison she had procured from the castle alchemist, Randalay. Zombina did this, and the king was escorted upstairs by guards after falling ill. Vesiesh interrupted the guards and offered to escort the king the rest of the way. She brought him to the throne room and completed the puzzle door to enter the Khazad-Karu vaults. The puzzle took her several tries, and she was nearly killed by the trapped door. Shortly after completing the puzzle, she heard a loud explosion elsewhere in the castle. This occurred around 3 a.m. Vesiesh dragged the king inside the vaults, slit his throat, and poured his king's blood into the vial she received from Wilma. The vial already contained Wilma's menstrual blood, which was a part of Wilma's spell. Vesiesh poured the concoction onto the eye of Zulbilt, the artifact that Wilma spoke of. Vesiesh then performed the ritual as instructed by her mother and was nearly killed by the power of the eye. A strange light and magical energy came from the artifact. Visages of the warriors Wilma sought after appeared in red light and shot into the ceiling. Odoacer, Zombini Indara, Marigold Mandrid, Kevlian Greystone, Gragas Stormbringer, Bretzen Mirrorshard, Miklian Greystone, Erwin Swiftwater, Morgrim Karoom, and Ryan. A voice spoke in Vesiesh's head. The voice stated the Burning Fist was restored to Cortania, but they were mere replicas, copies of the warriors, in a husk with no soul. The voice said that they would possess the memories and abilities of those they replicated, and would be indistinguishable to others until the copies met death. Vesiesh heard knocking on the throne room doors, and fled down the stairs in the back of the throne room, leading to the basement vault. There, she met Zogrim Karoom, the first king of Kaz-Karum. Vesiesh had learned from reading Kaz-Karum history that Zogrim was a vampire, sired by Vlad, son of the devil. Zogrim told her he was trapped by the door and magical runes. He tried to convince her to let him out, offering the massive amount of treasure in the basement vault. Vesiesh believed he would kill her if she let him escape, so she refused and ran back up the stairs. Guards were no longer banging on the throne room door, so she left out into the hallway. She spotted Prince Morgrim and convinced him to come to her. After a botched attempt to slit the boy's throat, Vesiesh chased him around the upstairs of the castle until he fell onto his stomach trying to evade her. She stuck her blade deep into his spine, killing the young child. Vesiesh continued downstairs and entered the soldiers' quarters, which was connected to the dungeons. The guards and the queen were all confused about the explosion that came from the old section of the dungeon. Zombina was in the room with them. The jail guard explained all dwarves were forbidden to enter that area, as they were starving out 2 armed drow prisoners. Vesiesh offered to investigate herself. The jail guard gave her the dungeon key, and she entered the dungeons with Zombina. Uldrum was in one of the cells and asked to be released. Vesiesh offered to do so, but told him to hold tight for a moment. Vesiesh and Zombina unlocked the door to the old section of dungeon, and were met in the doorway by Dakarth. Standing behind him was 20 elite drow soldiers. 2 drow lay dead on the dungeon floor. Dakarth explained the drow were mad and attacked when he entered. Dakarth led his soldiers through the dungeons and into the soldiers' quarters, where they attacked the dwarves there. Queen Hasva fled the battle, as her troops were quickly slain by the elite drow. The drow began to set fire to the room. Vesiesh ordered Dakarth and his men to pursue the queen. The drow split up and raided the castle. The sounds of swords clanging, men screaming, and crackling fire filled the night. Vesiesh and Zombina went upstairs to search for the queen. They came upon a locked door, which led to Prince Morgrim's room. Vesiesh convinced the queen to open the door so she and Zombina could protect her. Upon opening the door, Zombina restrained Queen Hasva with her whip. Then Vesiesh slit her throat. Vesiesh and Zombina returned to Uldrum's cell and released him. The trio left the castle through the hole Dakarth created with the explosive device. The dwarf soldiers in the castle were losing the battle and retreated outside the gates and into the town. Many were unable to escape the keep. Amongst the dead were Brutus, the head gate guard, Hyatt, the head butler, Trudap, a dwarven noble, Marheim, a handsome young guard, Zorf, the head chef in the kitchens, and many other guards and nobles. The drow set the castle ablaze, leaving it a burnt-out husk. Fleeing castle guards, the castle librarian Paupus, the castle alchemist Grandalay, Uldrum Brownfinger, and the visitors from Ferelden, Sorin and Vesiesh, warned the people of the city about the drow invasion. The warrior blacksmith, Vandag Amberbender, and Kaz Karum's master of war, Valuik Grimseeker, had left the castle shortly before the attack. The two dwarves led the survivors out of the mountains and northeast, to lands under King Dokin's protection. Vandag and the Kaz Karum people arrived at King Dokin's castle with Sorin, Uldrum, Valuik, and Vesiesh. He and the rest of the dwarves joined their strength to Ferelden's, but Sir Duncan's scouts had sent dire warnings. The Drow Queen was making preparations to strike north, to strike Ferelden. All had gone according to Wilma's plan.